This is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage,
I'm Nancy Richards.
and there is so much to talk about today. And we have another episode coming to you this week, and we're only going to do one, but there's so much going on that we felt compelled. We had to talk about it and give our perspectives on it, and of course. Uh, we have the shutdown ending yesterday or the day before, and it did not end the way that I wanted it to, or that the way that many people on our side of the aisle hoped it would. Because 8 Democrats in the Senate defected and voted with Republicans, basically on a pinky promise that the Affordable Care Act subsidies would get a vote. What did you think of the way things ended, Nance?
Um, I was disappointed. I listened to Fetterman's why he well, he was always looking to to vote.
Yeah, yeah, he
I
always
listened
voted,
to
even in the
Keynes
previews.
from
Yeah.
Virginia's, and a lot of his constituents were out of work and they needed to get back. Um, I kind of understand why they decided to vote with the Republicans. I don't support it, but I understand why they kind of did. So I do see it as a cave because my whole issue is that we put our heels in the sand, and for what reason, you know?
Yeah.
Um, Now I think time will tell if how much this will hurt the Democratic Party, and more importantly, how much it will actually hurt, the American people, especially with healthcare. Um, so I, I I'm still thinking about this. I'm not happy about it, but I'm not ready to primary them. I know some people are, but
Oh,
I'm not there yet.
oh, I'm definitely ready. I think they should all be primaried, and in fact, I'll just go through the names of the folks who did vote with the Republicans. So it's Senator Dick Durbin, who's retiring. There's
Well, yeah, let's
yeah,
talk about read the
yeah.
names and then I have some to
Yeah.
say.
Senator Tim Kaine, Senator John Fetterman, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, whose own daughter came out against this deal, who's running for Congress, uh, Senator Maggie Hassan, also from New Hampshire, Senator Angus King, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada, and Senator Jackie Rosen, also from Nevada. They all voted with the Republicans. And what's interesting about each of them, and this tells me that even though Schumer voted no, it was definitely a calculated move, is
Yeah.
and he knew about it, is because uh, each of these senators is either retiring or is not facing imminent reelection,
Yeah.
meaning next year. And so he knew what was going on, and he'd made these 8, sort of take the fall for the rest of the caucus.
Or he didn't have the ability to stop them. So what does that say about his leadership?
He's weak.
So that's where I think it's time where we don't need Schumer anymore because he doesn't have that. He's not. So the reason why I think we keep Schumer as senator is because he's the quintessential, Papa senator, for the
Yeah,
Democrats. And now he's, great grandpa senator, and he's just not getting the respect, and I don't think he's holding the line like he can. So maybe it's time for him to go. It
yeah,
is time for him to go, actually. Um, yes, and we could kind of speculate that how convenient that all those senators who voted with the Republicans don't have to worry about being reelected because they're not running.
yeah.
So we could say that that was calculated, and I would say it quite possibly is. Um, which is something, it's not the first time politicians have done something like that. So I'm not like, oh,
No, no, no. But
oh my
and
God.
my
Yeah.
apologies to our listeners. You might hear like a spasm and noise. I just had a Charlie horse. I just got a Charlie horse.
Oh, okay.
I had to adjust myself a little bit because I was like, oh my God, okay.
What does a
Um,
Charlie horse sound like? I didn't hear that.
Well, no, because like I had to move my leg and the table went kind of, the table went kind of haywire a little bit. So I apologize in advance to our listeners, but um no, I'm not shocked by it either, and I would not characterize all of the moderates in the Senate as being squishes like these eight. I think, you know, we have both senators from Michigan who are kind of the face of the moderate wing of the party, especially Alyssa Slotkin. Just they both voted no. John Ossoff, probably the most vulnerable of the Senate Democrats up for re-election next year, has every reason to want to see a shutdown end. He also voted no. And so Ruben Gallego, Mark Kelly, those are both moderates from Arizona, another state that Trump won, also voted no. And so,
Oh, man. I I I I'm really tired of this bullshit of we vote about worrying about being elected. And so I don't care about that anymore. I really don't care. I don't care that the six people that went, they didn't have any real political risk. When are we going to start making policy where we're doing it because it's what's good for the United States, as opposed to whether it's going to keep me in office?
well, no, I know, but Ezra Klein has been making the case over the last year or so. I'm stretching my legs here, so if I look
Because
kind of old.
Democrats don't have any real power right now. We don't
No,
have
well,
any real power.
exactly. And so Ezra Klein is saying basically, what he's been saying over the last few months is that Democrats have to be given latitude to do certain things that may, be politically unpopular or whatever. So this way we can get to a place where we're in power again. But my take on all of this is that I think Schumer is, no matter which way it all went, either he orchestrated this so that he could vote no and certain other key members could vote no and there wouldn't be any ramifications, or these people acted amongst themselves on their own without leadership from the caucus. Either way, it doesn't look good for him. And I think that he is. Uh, I grew up watching him and respecting him, and so um, it pains me that, people are, wanting his removal, but now I'm one of those people. I think he should
Yeah, I
step
would like to.
I think he should step aside both as leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and I think he shouldn't run for re-election. I think
Oh,
he
like
should,
his Dick Durbin,
yeah.
Dick Durbin was
Team.
been around like, they've been around for a long time.
And well, and Nancy Pelosi too just announced her retirement as
Yeah,
well.
she did. She waited till after the election. That's
Yeah.
your girl. Aren't you sad?
I'm not sad. I'm more, she's had a great career, and she is the leader in the Democratic Party, unlike, Schumer and Jeffries and some of the newer ones. The reason why I'll miss her is because she knows how to wield power, and she knows how to count the votes. The last government shutdown before this, also when Trump was president and she was the Speaker of the House, not one Democrat caved in the House
Or
because,
they were, it wasn't the Republicans that were had their heels in the sand for the wall. It was like building the wall.
well, but it was in the transition. It was between when the Republicans were leaving the majority and the Democrats won, and she was going to be the Speaker. And she didn't want to budge. She didn't want to pay for his wall, and uh, and he blinked that time. He blinked that time, and that's how you do it. That's a master
Yeah.
class in how you get them to fold, because
Well,
not one Democrat at that point folded. And at that time, you had members as progressive as AOC, because that was her first year in the Congress, and to as moderate and perhaps even center right as Max Rose, who was our congressman at the time. None of them budged, none of them moved. And that was in part because of Nancy Pelosi's, leadership and knowing how to, you know, wield political power. That's the one thing I'll miss about her.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. Well, I think in regards to those who did cave, it was disappointing. A lot of people were hoping this, there's just a lot of things that are bad about this whole scenario. People went without paychecks for a month, air traffic controllers. I mean, my neighbor, it took him 3 days to get home. He lost 3 days worth of work, Matt.
Mhm.
Um, and so traveling was fun. I think people were nervous about Thanksgiving, what was going to happen in regards to people trying to get home, for the holidays. Um, we, start having crashes in the sky because you have overworked, and Donald Trump was saying things to the air traffic controllers like, if you can't stay, like he was like yelling at them. It's like, yo, buddy, we're fucking hanging on by, we're doing a very tedious job. You're not paying us, and
Mhm.
you don't have enough people here. So, like, have a little support. Like, he had no cheering squad for the air traffic controllers. I was very surprised. Well,
Well,
not very surprised, but
well, we know how Donald Trump treats workers, so we know he has a propensity not to pay them, even when he was a quote businessman and real estate developer. He
the
has
show that Christie just had with the $10,000 checks with
well,
some TSA members.
well, I think it's exactly what you said. I think that's a show, just like, everything about Donald Trump's supposed success as a businessman was a show. And so when the reality is he never respected workers. He always used the legal system to get himself, out of legal trouble or to extract financial rewards and to suppress workers, which is always what he's done. He's always not paid them. He is most construction workers and bricklayers
I
and
had a
things like
boyfriend
that.
who worked for him down
Yeah,
in Atlantic City. So
and they didn't
yes.
and they didn't want and most of the unions in the construction trade did not want to go near him for that reason.
Well, he is changing the narrative. There's nothing that he does wrong. We know this, there's no accountability. So SNAP benefits, people were um not getting their SNAP benefit. He was threatening states who were going to fund SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
So like really you're going after people who are hungry, and then they were telling, the lies that they spew out in regards to that these healthcare funds were like funding illegal aliens and criminals. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that is not true at all.
Well,
So,
not only that, he was threatening the states, but he was also, taking his legal challenge of the SNAP benefits all the way to the Supreme Court.
yes.
And so I think that uh, like a program that helps to feed poor children, and he's fighting it. Saying that he shouldn't have to do that, essentially at the Supreme Court. That says everything we need to know, as well as a million other things about him. But I think that, um, you know, I have of two minds as well. I'm also kind of conflicted. I do think it's time for Schumer to go. I don't think that these eight should have acted alone. I think that they should have perhaps gotten something more than a pinky promise from John Thune and Mike Johnson about the Affordable Care Act subsidies. But I also do agree that, in a couple of weeks when Thanksgiving rolls around, and if there were issues with travel and there were issues with transportation and air traffic controllers, um, I do think that there was a limited shelf life to how long the Democrats could play this hand, because the polling suggested that people blame Trump and blame the Republicans for it.
Well,
And
the
so
elections, last week's elections also.
yeah, and so people, that's all that made people further more enraged that, they saw it as stealing the momentum from last week's elections, and take rescuing Republicans, because Republicans were the one who were largely being blamed by the American people. But there was only so far you could take that. By the time Thanksgiving rolls around, if flights are delayed, if people are not getting paid, and the luggage is getting
Oh,
lost, and airports are chaotic, people are going to that blame is going to bleed into the Democrats as well.
yeah.
And so they're going to want to see something happen. They're going to want to see something be resolved. And so I think uh, there was only limited options for them, and there was only so far they could take it.
So let me ask you this. I think that the whole healthcare thing is they're not going to get any vote at all. And Trump's been floating around this idea that he's going to give us $2,000 checks for healthcare. Um, I'm wondering if he does do that and he just gives people $2,000 checks,
I'm
that's
still
not going to
waiting.
cover the cost of healthcare premium.
I'm still waiting on the Doge checks.
Yeah, well, those are somewhere in the mail. The only check I got was from Kathy Hochul from the
Me too.
Democrats.
Me too.
So
Yeah.
for an inflation, and that came from New York, not from Donald Trump.
No.
So I didn't get anything from the federal government. The only thing I got from the federal government is I have a bill because I owe taxes this
Yeah.
year. So I'm paying off my tax bill. So that's what I do every month. So I give them
Yeah.
even more money. Thank you.
Well,
So,
I think in the Senate they may get their vote, but Mike Johnson has already said in the House that he doesn't want that. But as far as I can tell, Hakeem Jeffries is introducing a standalone bill through the discharge petition uh, process to get around the Speaker to vote on the subsidies. And I think as long as he gets maybe three or four Republicans to go along with him, he could get Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's been talking about that for a few weeks now. And
yeah.
so, like, if he gets her and a few others, then it's potentially possible that he could get around Mike Johnson and vote on these subsidies.
But then it still has to go
Oh,
through
to the
the,
Senate, yeah, to the Senate. And so, and then, then that'll be really, the case where they could hold them to, their pinky promise. Well, here is the opportunity now. You have the
well, look,
opportunity to,
Republicans need to have some sort of a showing that they're actually doing any policy that helps the American people. And what policies have they created that have actually helped the American people? This whole border thing, they've shut down the border, what but now this whole quota with capturing people is going you know, is an overreach in that whole deportation and lack of due process.
well,
So
and
that's not
economic
really good.
and economic conditions have only worsened since Donald Trump came back into
Right.
power.
Donald Trump talks about prices going down. That's totally false. I made a post this week. I went to the supermarket and I took, uh, photographs of prices of things that I know that I go and I buy on all the time, like toilet paper.
Yeah,
Like a roll of toilet paper is $1.49, where vividly remember it being, 59 cents.
yeah,
I'm talking about the cheap, and so prices have gone way up. I went to go buy Applegate turkey. I buy Applegate turkey in the thing, and I've paid 3.99 for Applegate turkey, and that's on sale. So that would be the cheap price. It was 9.99
oh my
for that.
God, nine to ten
Exactly.
dollars.
That's what caused me to take pictures of the prices. I'm going, holy shit. I'm like, 9.99. I'm like, I'm in a supermarket. I wasn't even like in a local store where sometimes
Yeah,
the prices are higher. I was in ShopRite, and that's a cheap supermarket. So, I'm like, I was like, prices aren't going down. This is baloney. Baloney. So, gas is still above $3. Its prices haven't gone down. Occasionally, what? It's 20 cents less here and there.
Yeah.
The market is you know,
Well,
hasn't
he
really moved.
Well, and his, tariffs, they're on, they're off, only some products, this, that. It's created a lot of instability. It's created a lot of chaos. That's another thing that he says he's going to do, that if the Supreme Court strikes down his tariffs, that's when he'll give us the checks. But, I'll believe it when I see it. And, maybe when he releases the Epstein files, that'll be when he does it, which is
Yes.
never.
Well, they haven't really done anything yet. So I think eventually the American people are going to be like, you're not producing. But what the Democrats have to have in place is ideas to say, well, this is what we would do if we were in office or if
Yeah.
we had power, um, as opposed to worrying about who's getting elected or not. Put forth policy that, is really going to help the American people. What can the federal government do to help the American people?
Well, you have to do both. You have to, I think, put policy forward, and then you also need a strong political arm to worry about people getting elected and reelected. And Mikey Sherrill was on the Bulwark podcast, and she made a really interesting case for why she won as governor in New Jersey. And the reason is because she was running against Trump, but not in the way that, in the past we've run against Trump. She made it a real economic message, not just affordability. She has said, he is made out with his crypto schemes and his 10% of Intel and his tariffs and his billionaire donors, while your prices have gone up, while your economic conditions have worsened. And so she tied it. She did run against Trump, but she, as she put it, she's like, I'm not running against him because he destroyed the East Wing of the White House. I'm running against him because he has, raised costs for people while he has used the position of president to enrich himself and his family through a variety of schemes.
Well, let's
And
talk about energy. I mean,
yeah,
this whole bullshit of, gutting a lot of forms of energy. Um, it's raising energy costs. People don't have different alternative forms for energy. So you're going to go back to like coal.
that's not coming back.
It's not
Yeah.
economically, um, it you're wasting a lot of like incentives. Like, people had tax breaks to buy electric cars. All right, fine. You don't want an electric car? You don't need your electric car. Like, no one's penalizing you for buying a gas car yet. You know what I mean? But people are being rewarded for electrical energy, and companies were being, given contracts and being rewarded for creating new forms of energy. And that's gone. Those incentives are gone. This administration has just wiped them out.
Yeah, and so, economic conditions have worsened. When, I was told that he would bring things back to where they were in 2019. I was told that, prices matter, the price of eggs matter, but evidently, that doesn't anymore because everything has gone up. Everything has gone up. While Donald Trump has enriched himself, while he's throwing Gatsby-like balls at Mar-a-Lago with people who were, at the time fearful of starving because of the loss of SNAP funds. And so the economic conditions for regular people have worsened. Trump has broken his promises and enriched himself instead. That should be a central piece of the
Not
economic
talking
effort
enough about that.
of the
People, you don't
Democrats.
see it a lot in the media. You don't have people challenging him on his lies. Like, th this whole press thing about Obama um getting uh, rewards for Obamacare, which is only called Obama. It's really the Affordable Health Care Act. But there's this fake, like, and it was even the site says that it produces false, you
Yeah.
know, like a satire website, and said that he gets this money for the Affordable Health Care Act, which is like Trump posted that on his Truth Social about him getting some form of subsidies. That has to be a form of impeachment.
Well,
Though
he's
that's never going to happen right now because of who's in power.
well,
But
and
that
we can impeach him for, much more serious crimes, which we'll talk about in a little
but
bit.
did
But
anybody call, his press secretary out on that? I didn't hear it. I don't, maybe if so, but I didn't see it on the news.
well,
Like,
I think the challenge of it is that, this it's what Steve Bannon's strategy was that Trump has always used, which is you just flood the zone with shit. And so it's just so hard. It's so difficult to keep up with. And so, you don't catch, what you were just talking about, especially because the news, at least in the last day or so, has been flooded by Epstein. And so I think that
well,
that
my
makes
problem is that people are going to start to begin that that's actually true. Because when he
yeah,
says things enough, people believe that it's truth, and it's not. It's like when he says that the elections are rigged, and they're not.
yeah.
And and people believe this narrative that he's saying of false things, and people are not calling on it. And so this whole thing about it's the Democrats' fault for the shutdown, the Democratic shutdown. But meanwhile, people aren't getting their benefits and people aren't getting paid, and you furloughed a lot of people, federal workers, from their jobs. Um, and because you have less people working in the federal government, you have less people like checking accountability and making things run smooth.
Well, he's fired all the inspector generals from every agency of the federal government. Justice Department lawyers are leaving in droves.
And health,
Yeah.
and we have a new strain of flu that's come out that I heard today that's coming from the UK and Japan and some other country, and it's like mutated like quite a bit. Um, let's see what happens with that.
Yeah, well, hopefully, we can hope for the best there, but we have a guy who eats roadkill, who's in charge of HHS and with brainworms and who swims in raw sewage, and it's an ex-heroin addict, just the guy you want for an emerging health crisis.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but we have, as far as, to put a pin in the shutdown matter, we're just the bill that was signed by the president a day or so ago is a continuing resolution which is effective until the end of January, and then they have to come back to the table again with all of this stuff, and hopefully they'll get, our side will get their shit together in the meantime, and
Might have
actually,
another shutdown.
yeah, and actually come up with a strategy. And so we'll stay on top of it, we'll monitor it. But, people are calling for Schumer's head, and I'm not unsympathetic to that. Head metaphorically, I'm not encouraging violence against anybody,
Right.
but
No, but
yeah.
a lot of people are really like, okay, buddy, you need to step down. Which leads us to our, New York congressional leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who also has been primaried.
Yeah,
Um,
he's going to be primaried by a council member who serves in within his congressional district, Chayasi. He is a young, kind of a progressive, 27 years old, challenging Jeffries from his left, which, interestingly enough, a few weeks ago, there was talk of him launching this primary, and he threw cold water on it. He said he wasn't going to do it. But now, I guess, with the events how they've unfolded in the shutdown, that encouraged him to do so. And most recent polling had Hakeem Jeffries defeating Chayasi by about 50 points. But
yeah, I think so too.
it's, that's from the outset right now, yes. But,
Well, first of all, he's the minority speaker, so
yeah.
he's in the powerful position. So th they're not going to oust him. People are
Well,
not going to
well,
vote him
listen,
out
well, listen.
unless there was somebody else that had the ability of being a strong minority leader, like getting rid of him and putting somebody else in. And do you
Well,
see anybody stepping up to the plate?
well, let me put it this way. This makes me think about 2014. The Republicans were in the majority at that point. Eric Cantor was the majority leader, and he got ousted in a primary. And he got ousted in a primary by a virtual unknown. And that was an early sign of like the Trump uprising, because the person who beat him was from far to his right, and Eric Cantor was pretty right. And so that was a sign of things to come. And we're in a time in the Democratic Party where people are really angry at the leadership of the party, including Hakeem Jeffries, for,
I don't blame people for
yeah,
being angry with
yeah.
him.
And so they're gonna, and so I don't think it's, is
But
it
there's this
like,
pull in the party of new moderate leadership and also
is it
new
likely? I mean,
progressive leadership.
I don't know if it's likely, but I don't think the chances are zero either, because just because, when voters tend to be angry at the leaders in their party's establishment, like they were in 2014 with Eric Cantor, they tend to not give a shit that they're in the leadership, and they do what they need to do at the ballot box. I think there are a couple people who I think could do a much better job than Hakeem Jeffries. I
Yeah,
always
but I
said,
don't think he's out because I know that district. That's where I taught,
yeah,
and that's a kind of conservative area. I mean, not
yeah.
all of it, but he covered where the school was, and that area was very conservative.
Oh yeah,
So,
well, it goes into East New York, parts of East New York and stuff too. And so
no, but
I think that's
Midwood,
fair.
the
Yeah.
whole Midwood area is very conservative. So,
I'm
um,
thinking Chayasi is probably going to rely on a lot of, at least for a lot of his strategy, he's probably going to rely on his council district, and his council district covers parts of East New York and other areas, and that's going to be an issue. But I'm happy that Hakeem Jeffries is getting a challenge, if for no other reason than it will force him to be a better leader, because so far he's dropped the
yeah,
ball, and
yeah.
he is and just his communication, as I've said a million times on this podcast, it sucks. He is so wooden, he is so stiff, he is so scripted. You could see the teleprompter playing in his head. And I think that we need people who are much better at communications. There's a few people, and we'll get when we talk to the Epstein about the Epstein stuff, there are a few people on the House Oversight Committee who would be excellent in leadership, and a few people who would be really good in leadership. Robert Garcia, he is the ranking member on the Oversight Committee. He's the one who's been getting all of these Epstein stuff. He's been communicating with the estate, and he's been getting a lot of these documents. He got the birthday card that Trump wrote him. He got all these emails, which we're going to talk about. He's been really effective. I think Summer Lee is from Pennsylvania, also on the Oversight Committee. She's also been a part of this as well. She would be a really good leader. I also think Pramila Jayapal, who's the leader of the Progressive Caucus, could also be a very good leader. There's a million other people who would be much better. And also the woman who's deputy minority leader, Catherine Clark, would also be really good. She was mentored by Nancy Pelosi, and would also be, I think, a pretty good leader of the caucus. I think Hakeem Jeffries has just dropped the ball in a number of ways, and he's just sucks as a communicator. He's just a robot, and I think that he's just so fake and APAC funded and all of the rest. And so I think that we definitely need new leadership for sure.
Well, I'm curious as if they're going to allow him first become a majority be speaker before they'll oust him. That's what
Oh,
I'm wondering because
oh,
he's
I
been
don't
kind
know.
of
Well, if he gets ousted in a primary, then he's gone before he
right.
can
But
get
I'm
up
saying if
there.
he
Yeah.
gets that opportunity, like people will give him that opportunity before they're like, oh, nope, you don't work. Okay,
Well,
somebody else.
I think ultimately he will, if the Democrats take back the majority and he sticks around, I think he will be the speaker. But I think, he's going to have to work for it, because a lot of candidates around the country who are not from, a lot of House candidates, I should say, who are not from the establishment, not recruited by the establishment, or very grassroots, they've not committed to backing Hakeem Jeffries for speaker for good reason. And I think that he should earn their support. And there was a lot of doubts when Nancy Pelosi wanted to be speaker the second time, until she had that very famous confrontation with Trump in the Oval Office, where she sort of dressed him down and left the Oval Office with her sunglasses and red jacket. And
Yeah.
so I think that he needs a moment like that to convince people that he's, up for the task. And so,
Well,
we'll
we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. We'll stay on top of it. But boy, Jeffrey Epstein just keeps finding his way back into the news. And Chuck Schumer must absolutely love it because nobody's talking about ousting him anymore except for us. And so nobody's talking about ousting him anymore because everybody's all focused on Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein, the reason why Epstein is back in the news is because there's been a trove of emails that have been released, which, you know, implicate Donald Trump to varying degrees of culpability in what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. There was one particular email where it seemed like, Trump was spending time with Epstein in the company of Virginia Giuffre, who was one of the more vocal victims of Epstein, committed suicide earlier this year. And then Jeffrey Epstein in a email to Ghislaine Maxwell, his accomplice, who's serving prison time in a country club now, basically, uh, said Trump is the dog that hasn't barked. And she said back, I've been thinking about that too. And that means one of a few things. I think Trump knew what was going on and just, didn't talk about it, or and he made clear that in many emails, including to the author Michael Wolff, I've read a few of his books, that he may have had some stuff on Trump that could have been damaging. So, what did you make of this trove of emails and this release of all this information?
So, I was listening to Dan Abrams today. He did a whole thing on this topic, and I agree with what he was saying. I think a lot of the things in there are going to embarrass him, but I don't think they're going to incriminate him. Um, so I kind of feel that speculation. There's definitely something in there that he's hiding because he's going way out of his way to, he's calling it a hoax, a Democratic hoax. They went and summoned Bobart today. They all put the heavy hitters on it. Like she had Bondi there and
Cash
Patel
Patel and
and even the
Rubio.
president, kind
Rubio.
of worried about how she's going to vote to release the files. Um, so there's definitely things there, but I don't think they're incriminating. I think they're going to just be embarrassing. I think a lot of it might have to do with Melania. I
What
think
do you
there's some
mean?
stuff in there. Well, because she was, I think that's how she got introduced through the friendship there. I think it's going to show him in bad light in regards to this deal uh, that Epstein was upset over with this mansion that Trump flipped, like kind of taking it from under his hand. There was some mansion. It's funny, like you and I, there's like something gone bankrupt, like, oh, it's only $40 million. Um,
I'm just 40 million.
yeah, so but Trump flipped it and sold it to an oligarch, a Russian oligarch. So, um, and I think Epstein was pissed off at him because I think Epstein wanted to do that. Um, so I think there's going to be things in there that show him to be, the shyster businessman that he is. Um, and embarrassing things about, him kind of being around when Epstein was doing what he was doing. And he kind of, you and I as teachers, we have obligations that when we see th things, we need to report it. Whereas Trump didn't actually have a legal obligation to report anything, but morally, he probably should have, and he didn't. So that, that's embarrassing. It's not incriminating, but it's embarrassing.
Well,
So I think so it's
yeah.
going to make him look bad. And Trump, he doesn't like to look bad.
Even if it's incriminating legally, number one, nobody's going to prosecute a sitting president.
Right.
Number
Right.
two, even if he were a private citizen, again, chances are a lot of the statutes of limitations on those kind of crimes are probably long overdue. So there's nothing that could happen legally. And so you're right, it's probably politically embarrassing, especially when, as we said about MAGA folklore. on this podcast many times, their goal, whether you're talking about J.D. Vance or Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or many of the right-wing influencers like Candace Owens and even Charlie Kirk when he was around, they were all talking about how they're going to release this names of democratic rich people cabal, pedophile cabals of people,
Oh, Christ.
but that's part of the folklore, and that's how Marjorie, got into it, and that's how Lauren Boebert got into it. And now, they're starting to see that the accusation that they made against the Democrats was actually a confession, because Trump is in those files. There's a reason he's pulling Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room with
Right.
with with the Attorney General, the Director of the FBI, the Secretary of State, uh, and
I'm sorry,
because
but as a young congresswoman, that's intimidating.
yeah.
Those are heavy hitters. And um when she came out of that meeting, I didn't physically watch it, but I heard her, and she sounded like they programmed her. Like she's like, he is just I'm still support him. He's the wonderful president. He's the greatest man in the world. Da 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 da. Like she just sounded like she was given some sort of Trump juice.
Well,
I
and yeah, but yet she didn't take her name off the discharge petition.
Not yet, but
She
it
didn't
was
take.
it 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 was just a weird, it felt like she was forced to say those things. It sounded forced.
Well, I'm sure it was, but she didn't take. So she was asked if she would take her name off the discharge petition, and she said no. And there may be other Republicans joining. Now, the Republicans who are signed on to the discharge petition in the House right now are Thomas Massey, who is the one of the original co-sponsors, along with Ro Khanna, the Democrat from California, and then Marjorie is a signatory. So is Boebert
Mace.
and Nancy Mace. And then we also have Don Bacon, who's going to vote for it, he said. So that's five Republicans that I count thus far. And with the swearing in the other day of Adelita Grijalva from Arizona, that's 218 votes to release. And now this is going to, you know, I think they know it's going to die somehow. The Trump administration, they know if it gets to the Senate, it's probably going to be dead in the water. But I think that they don't want to risk the embarrassment of more. I'm hearing close to 8 or 9 Republicans may join the Democrats in voting for this, and so um, they don't want to risk the embarrassment of Trump looking like he's lost favor with people in his own party. And so I think that's what it is, and they don't. And he's also clearly hiding something in those files. Every time he talks about it, he goes apoplectic.
Yeah. He, well, because it's going to make him look bad. The Republicans I hear say, well, Democrats could care less about this when Biden was president, and they're absolutely right. But the fact of the matter is he's still in there regardless of whether we go after it or not, or who goes after it or not.
Well,
Whoever
and,
votes.
and
The
this was
fact of the
not.
matter is that is this stuff, you know, happened, and Donald Trump is close to this person. So,
Well,
um,
yeah, and not only that, but he's also, it was not a major feature of, of Democratic folklore that we had this pedophile cabal that we needed to go after the way that MAGA has done. And not only that, but he's acting very much like a guilty person. He sends the Justice Department to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell, and to basically say, she never saw him in any inappropriate
yeah,
situation.
now she's eating steak and she's,
Yeah.
gets curling iron in her
And
prison.
she's playing with puppies now in prison, from what I
Oh,
hear.
okay. She's got
Yeah,
puppies.
she's playing with puppies, and she gets special visits, and all of these
And she's in
things.
a new prison, so
Yeah, she's in a country club basically, and that's all at the direction of Donald Trump. And let me just say, I read Virginia Giuffre's book. I finished it on Sunday, and I this is not a word that I would often use publicly, but Ghislaine Maxwell is a sick cunt. She is a sick cunt. This woman recruited these young girls. She knew exactly what she was doing. She manipulated them. She made these girls feel as though she was a maternal figure to draw them in, and then she
But what did she
participated.
do? She picked them up off the street? Like where did she
Yes,
find?
yes. She found Virginia Giuffre. She found her at Mar-a-Lago, and she found her because she was
What was she
working.
doing in Mar-a-Lago?
She was working a part-time job, and
Oh,
like,
okay.
she was like a bus person or something. And so,
Okay.
and Virginia Giuffre's father worked at Mar-a-Lago, and that's how she got the job. And so, uh, she picked her up at Mar-a-Lago. She was 15 years old, and brought her to Epstein's house and engaged in the abuse herself. This woman is sick. She is a sick human being, and I'm not going to use that word again, but we all know what it is. And uh, she is a sick human being, and the fact that Trump is now treating her like she's in Club Med, and that a pardon and she's officially applied for a sentence commutation. She's a,
Yeah.
she's officially applied for a sentence commutation, and the only reason she would do that is because she really thinks that there's a serious chance he would. And
Well,
so.
partying everybody this week. So, Giuliani and the whole, court people for January 6th have gotten their pardons this week. It's disgusting. And more people from January 6th.
Well, and
I
those were pardons made in futility because, for example, a lot of Rudy Giuliani's charges and Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis, those people were charged at the state level. Pardons at the presidential level don't do anything for state charges.
He wants to get his license back. That's hilarious.
He wants to get his license back.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard he was looking to try to get his law practice back.
Oh, he
So
should start his own hair dye line.
he just, yeah, actually, you know what? That will probably be more successful than anything right now. I mean, the man's got to pay his rent, right? But he's losing all his jobs. So
Yeah,
maybe he should sell hair dye. That's a
yeah.
good.
He should, his hair dye line, name it, Four Seasons for the one landscaping business he set up the
They'll
press
come
conference.
in different colors, summer, spring.
Yeah. That'll be good. Yeah, that'll be good. But yeah, this will be interesting. There's a vote scheduled next week for this discharge petition, and because Mike Johnson, basically acknowledged that they have the votes and they could get around him to put it on the floor, and so that's what they're going to do next week. And so we're going to be watching this, but man, some of those emails are just, they're definitely, there's definitely suggesting that Trump knew more than what he's let on, and definitely possibly engaged in a lot of this behavior. Um, and so there was one where Jeffrey Epstein said that Donald Trump was leering at these girls who were like, encamped around his pool, and he walked right into the glass door because he was so transfixed on them.
He's a creep. He's
Yeah.
a creep. You know, like I said, I think this is going to, at the very least, embarrass him. I don't really see him getting any crimes right now. Like I was thinking like beforehand, I was like, oh, what if like the Democrats go in power? Da, 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 da. And I think what the Democrats initially will do will like they'll start going for impeachment, because there's
Oh,
so many things that Trump has done. And I'm like, please, Democrats, when you get into power, first make some policies that you can campaign on, things that you've done for the American people to make life better and more affordable, then impeach his ass.
well, yeah,
That's what I hope they do.
I think what I would do if I were the Democratic speaker, I would, take a page from Nancy Pelosi's book in that I would set up a select committee to investigate the Jeffrey Epstein matters, just the way that she did with January 6th. I would appoint, people who we know are going to do the work, and just the way that that Nancy Pelosi appointed Liz Cheney to the committee on January 6th.
Right,
I would
but
appoint Marjorie Taylor Greene.
work on more affordability issues first and then go after.
We could do both at the same time. I
Well,
think,
we didn't do it the last time. So we focused more, and that was a lot of criticisms. Some people were like, fine, especially more of the conservative base, like making things more affordable. We haven't really done that. We All we've been doing has been fighting each other, and we're not creating things that are really benefiting the country. So I think they need to really work on that. And I think when things like that start happening, redistricting and political game playing is not going to matter as much because people are going to vote for good leadership.
yeah.
And
Well, I hope that that's the case. I think the media environment that we're in is kind of different from anything we've seen before, is in that people can sort of choose their own adventure when it comes to, facts and where they want to, and their own reality, essentially. And so I think I'm hoping that if there is, I don't know to,
well, this
I don't know to what degree that even if Democrats win back the majority in the House, I don't think they'll win back the Senate. But
this leads us to like our next thing, what we're going to talk about with which is Mandami,
yeah,
coming into office. You know, I I hope that it's going to be interesting to see how he reaches out to places like Staten Island. Um, and what is he do? What is he going to do for homeowners and people who live out here who didn't vote for him? Um, because the affordability thing, yes, great, but how is he going to make things more affordable here on Staten Island?
well,
I'm
I
wondering,
think
are we still going to be forgotten?
Well, I think one of the things to look out for is what the state actually gives him. Now, I know the governor, she's got her own race for reelection next year, so she's probably going to be doing a lot of this with that in mind. But I
Yeah.
think I think that I don't think that he'll get his free buses, but I do think he'll get some version of the childcare that he wants. And the governor has signaled that she's willing to work with him there on that, and so I think that they'll get that. But I think that he's made some early appointments that are actually quite moderate from what I know about them. Dean Fullahan, he is the first deputy mayor, and he had the same position for Bill de Blasio in the second
Yes.
term.
Yeah.
And he's actually he was appointed by the governor to the state fiscal control board, and so he's something of a moderate kind of an operations guy. A lot of experience. He knows, the cogs in the machine. So that's one appointment. And then he had his state assembly chief of staff as his going to be his chief of staff at
Staff,
City Hall.
yes.
Yeah. And so those are the only appointments that I know about so far. And I always say
And
to
then he has verbally said that he wants to keep
Jessica
the
Tisch.
police, yeah,
Yeah.
on as police commissioner. So yeah, there are some moderate things, but then he went and did something that I felt was odd. I don't quite get this. Why didn't he march in the Veterans Day parade?
He didn't?
No, he was up in the Bronx,
Mm.
um, at a veterans center, like, helping out up there. Like he went to visit vets to thank them and
Yeah.
talk with them, but he didn't go to the parade. And I kind of like was like, I think I just don't think that's I remember de Blasio, like this is kind of a different thing, but I remember when de Blasio ate pizza with a knife and fork, and people hated him for that.
Yeah.
Like a
Well,
silly thing like that. And I'm thinking like this could backfire for him, like not coming. Like he also mentioned that at the debate about not attending parades. Did you hear anything about why he doesn't attend parades? I don't get why.
he's attended some parades. He's gone to Pride. He's gone to some of the more, like, I think maybe the Puerto Rican Day and some of the
I don't know.
Caribbean Independent. I've seen him walk around. I
He didn't
definitely
go to
know
the
he was,
veterans. He didn't go to the one in the city. He didn't go to the Veterans Day parade
yeah.
in the city,
I,
which I
well,
thought was,
at
I
least,
don't think that was a good move.
yeah. Well, maybe not from a optics or PR standpoint, but I do think that maybe actually talking to veterans may be a little bit more
I think that's a
meaningful.
great thing as
Yeah.
well. You could have did both, but
Yeah.
I think by not going to that parade, it draws like you get people like the Post coming in, and it just draws this negative attention that I don't, not early on. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just thought it was an awkward thing to do on
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure.
So
Uh,
I'm good with his choices for
yeah.
appointees so far. I
Yeah.
like what he's doing with that, but that was the one thing I was like, not a good
Yeah.
move.
Yeah, well, we'll see if there's any real blowback to it. But I think as far as anything that he wants to do policy wise that relies on the state, I think he's got to temper his expectations. The things that um, I think the things that he can do, he should do. He wants, when he says to freeze the rent, it's mainly for those apartments that are rent stabilized under the Rent Control Guidelines Board, which he does have control over. So he will make that happen. I think that he should uh, get some version of, he's probably going to get some version of the child care that he wants. That's kind of a universally popular thing. I think that the buses may be a little bit more difficult. They may want to start over the pilot program again because things have changed since it was last happened. The last pilot, I think, was 2019, early 2020, pre-COVID. So a lot of things have changed in public transportation since then. And
I
so
took the bus yesterday. Um, it, it was interesting about people paying on the bus.
yeah,
But the bus driver certainly didn't enforce it if people who weren't paying on the bus. Um, but there's a little bit of there's a little debate now. Right now, there's a garden, Elizabeth Street Garden, and my friend who just moved into to some affordable housing was telling me there was a lot across the street that there was supposedly geared as a compromise for that's where the garden was going to go, and they were going to put affordable housing on that lot. But Eric Adams has now made that lot a municipal park, so it's going to make it more difficult to put housing. Um, and even the guy who ran the Elizabeth Street, he was like, he was kind of disappointed. He goes, he didn't want this to be, you know, a tug, use the garden as a tug for where you could, he was kind of, upset that that this issue was kind of impacting his garden, or not
yeah.
his garden, but um,
Well, we could do both at the same time. We definitely
yeah.
want to build affordable housing, but we also want to preserve public spaces and conserve parks and other natural spaces as well.
Well, this was
Uh,
an abandoned space that people
yeah,
turned into, it's beautiful, park. But I went to go visit a friend of mine who was part of this, a recipient of affordable housing through the rezoning down on the Lower East Side, and I was, I was like, wow, like, there was quite a few new buildings put up, and good chunks of the buildings have to be affordable housing, and a friend of mine got one of those apartments, and it's lovely, lovely. And I'm like, oh, please, let's have more of that.
yeah.
But
And this, well, I said this before we came on, and go back to Mikey Sherrill on the Bulwarks. She said the challenge, and she's right, when it comes to housing, is that wealthy and middle class people think we're going to fill the neighborhood with, bad elements, and then the people who are on the poorer side are going to think that we're just going to build luxury condos and we're going to price them out. And so I think government just everywhere, especially here in New York City, needs to do a better job of actually building real affordable housing.
also build more middle class housing. Like what's wrong with that? Like
Yeah,
more middle class apartments. Um, things, like Mitchell Llamas, like those are wonderful. Why can't we have more of those? People like, or have city housing where city employees, like for example, as a teacher, my starting salary doesn't qualify me
no.
qualify a lot of people for some of this affordable housing. But if you want to stay and raise your family in New York City, you can't afford a two-bedroom apartment in New York,
Um,
a two, three-bedroom. You have to go buy, a house, you go out on Staten Island maybe, but even that's hard to do.
yeah.
But reward people who have become city employees. Like God knows this whole new tier 6 people have to work forever
Oh
to
yeah, I'll be dead before I can enjoy my.
yeah. So, give a perk, make some
Yeah.
affordable housing for city employees.
Yeah, and as far as housing and rent freezes and all that is are concerned, I think, Mamdani, I'm sure one of the things he's doing is with his legal counsel is probably exploring the options he has because of these ballot measures and what kind of powers and authority he now has to put affordable housing up in New York City and different places that could use it. And so um, we'll see how that plays out. But another part of what he's been doing, and I saw a member of his transition team on New York One talking about the plans for, inevitably when Trump tries to derail him in some way, either through taking funding or for what I think is going to happen, he'll send he'll step up federal presence here, either through these masked goons, or they'll send the National Guard. And uh, they are wisely, I think, making all kinds of preparations for different scenarios for
Well,
how that
there's
could go
the
down.
Staten Island Action Coalition is um there and La Colmena, they're having I got an email. They're having a kind of a a fair, not a fair. A fair sounds like you're buying stuff. It's like a workshop, a weekend workshop on how to kind of tell businesses how to address when ICE raids come in and what their rights are and things like that.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing. Did they post a flyer about that? Because I'll put it on our social media page.
Um, Staten Island Action Coalition. I got an email from La Colmena. I don't know if that was for posting. But the Staten Island Action Coalition, hold on, where is it? I'm trying to look where I have it. Oh, here it is. It's Signs of Solidarity. It's happening this Sunday. Um, it's people have to sign up for it. When it's on the 6th from 12 to 2, it's on different commercial avenues. They're going to target 2 to 3 business avenues. They're going to go into different distributing literature and signs to businesses designed to inform them how they can protect their employees and how to survive an ICE raid. Um, so yeah, I'll forward you this flyer.
Okay, because I think that's quite helpful in the face of a potentially stepped up federal presence here in New York City. It hasn't happened yet, but it will undoubtedly when Zohar
Well, that's what they're
Mamdani.
doing on Staten Island, and then La Comunidad seems to be a citywide thing that's happening up in Washington Heights.
Okay, well,
So
inevitably, we're going to see an increased federal presence when Zohar Mamdani
the
becomes.
people need to be
Yeah.
prepared on what their rights are. I think about when I watch these things on, like, I think about what my reaction would be, my reaction is I want to jump in front of the ICE agent and say, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
think I think we all want to be polka dot dress woman. We all want to be her.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we all want to be her, and if she's out there and if you're listening, please come on. I would love to talk to you. Like we would love to talk to you.
yeah,
And I don't know her name, and I don't think she's done any media, but I would love to have a conversation with her. But the most horrible ICE video I've seen, it may have been on one of your stories, is when that poor man had a seizure.
yeah.
Oh my God, that was so terrible.
They took his wife
Yeah.
and they separated. And a lot of these people have documentation, you know, and when we think about Sarah, like the high school girl who graduated, she went to high school here on Staten Island. a lot of people have certain documentation there, but the thing is, when they're detaining them, they're not having access to people in regards to who they can talk to. In regards to certain due process, like if you and I get arrested, we're entitled to, speak to a lawyer. We're entitled to call someone. Um, they're not getting those. Like some people, like that guy who had the seizure, they didn't know where his wife went. Like that was the problem. Like with all that media, he got some help. They couldn't find where she went. Like
Yeah.
that's so shit like that. Like that's the stuff that really bothers me. Uh, and if they're being detained and then they're going to figure out the process if they're legally here or not. uh, Yes, but like what are they being access to? Are they getting any type of translation? Is there a lawyer? Are they be able to speak to someone? Who are they
What's
pleading their case
what's
in front?
what's the
Exactly.
process? Yeah, what is the
Yeah,
process?
what's the process? And no
What
one's
is
talking about that.
what is there a hearing? Is there, a case? I know, we talked a lot about the cases down at 26 Federal Plaza in New York City where people are coming out and getting arrested and stuff. But just the way that it's, been carried out elsewhere is kind of has been shambolic, and it's been cruel and inhumane for sure. And, so
Well, we're going to hopefully, on our next show, we're talking to some people who are working with people who have been detained and
yeah.
kind of what's their experience and what's going on. So hopefully that's going to happen in our next episode.
Yeah, and then we'll shed some light about what the actual experiences are, um and hopefully, work to make some change in this area. I think this is uh nobody wants a totally wide open border, but nobody wants people being grabbed off the street randomly either. I
Right.
think I think there has to be a happy medium. There needs to be
If
some kind of process that's humane and just.
If they're collecting criminals, yes. But if there are other people that are being swept up as collateral damage, then they need to fix that. They can't deny that that's not happening. And so if they're picking up people, or they need to be transparent, because the other thing that they're not talking about is now they have a quota system. So these agents have a quota, so they have to meet a certain amount, they have to pick up a certain amount of people.
Is it Stephen Miller's 3,000 a day, or is it more or less than that?
So it's these quotas that they have to abide by. And so in the interim, if you don't have enough criminals, you're just picking up people. And with Trump's whole idea of, like he fought that do people who are non-citizens have, 14th Amendment rights? Um, the Supreme Court kind of, said no.
Yeah. Well,
And so
they've had mixed record on that. So they did say that in the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case 9-0, they all said you need to bring this guy back so he does have due process. But then in other cases, they've stripped temporary protections of Venezuelans. They have allowed him to take on arbitrary actions as it relates to other immigration enforcement matters as well. And so there's a mixed record here, but I'm hoping that we get some new updates on this Staten Island young girl who's been detained, and hopefully she's been released and determined to not be a threat and would actually hopefully make a positive contribution if she stays here.
yeah, so we're tentatively going to be talking to two people who are working with her tomorrow. And so that should happen. They're a little busy, so we've kind of set a tentative, and so we'll hopefully you'll hear from we'll get a second podcast out this week.
Yeah.
So and then just to go shift gears so we can is that a lot of speaking of like going like Mandami's appointments, and a lot of people now are like, oh, Mandami's, I'm leaving. We have a secession rally on Staten Island
Tomorrow, yes.
tomorrow.
Yeah, so and it's led by one Sam Pirazzolo,
Oh,
who is my assemblyman. He is a showman, nothing more, nothing less. You teachers may remember him from teachers may remember him. He tried to force New York State to strip tenure from teachers a long time ago in a lawsuit. Before he was in elected office, he's in elected office finally, but he's been trying. This is like his fifth attempt, and he finally got it. And so,
he
uh,
doesn't hang that on his voting thing when he runs.
oh, this
The
is this
guy who wants to rip tenure.
Yeah, wants to rip tenure from job protections, but yet claims to be in favor of unions. And I'm looking at the flyer right now for it. It says "Free Staten Island from New York City, declaring Staten Island independence." Friday, November 14th, 10 a.m., Richmond Road and Newdorp Lane. And, what I would say to that is
That's in front of the Republican Party. Is that where they're having it?
maybe. I think that's where it is. And yeah, the last time I saw that was when we, exposed their racist text a few weeks ago. And but what I would say to that is, number one, let's just be real about it. It takes a vote in Albany, and that's not going to happen.
Right.
The
So
yeah.
my dad was a very active member of the secession movement the last time, and him and I were on opposite sides. Me being a city employee, that we do have a lot of benefits being city employees, being a part of New York City. So a lot of these people that are wanting to break away are firemen and cops and teachers, and I'm like, yo, but
Well,
it's not really gonna work.
if they work here in Staten Island, they will no longer work for the New York City Department of Education. They'll work for the Staten Island Board of Education, which
Yeah,
may not give them the same benefits and so
exactly.
or the same perks or the same pay.
And
And so
also, people who send their kids to school here may also not get one of the things that's great about New York City schools is our services. And you
yeah.
may not necessarily get them because they won't be backed by that financially.
Yeah.
So be careful what you wish for. Now, I agree with kind of the sentiment of a lot of the people at the rally that we feel like we get the short end of the stick, and we do. Like, we do. We are the Forgotten Borough. That's the name of our podcast.
Yeah.
Um, People tend to, and I do agree sometimes that, the city imposes policy, and they don't think about the implications of Staten Island in regards to like traffic and how we get around and mass transit that is actually available to us. They
Hmm.
don't think about that. I really hope that this mayor appoints a Staten Island czar, meaning someone here who can be a liaison to him in regards to going, yo, buddy, like this is how this is going to impact. I mean, I know we have council seats and things like that, but having someone who really kind of, knows this borough and can show that, we don't operate the same. And I'm sure every other borough is unique in its own sense as well, where they have things that work well for them that don't work well in other boroughs. But
Yeah.
I think that we're forgotten more than any other borough.
Absolutely. But I think your sentiments about being the forgotten borough are coming from a much more genuine place than Sam Pirazzolo's. Sam Pirazzolo's um, sentiments about this, and undoubtedly a lot of the people, maybe not all of them, a lot of the people who will be at this rally tomorrow come from a sense of racist panic about
Yeah.
Mamdani. And so I think that that's really what's driving this here. And actually, I was taking the ferry home one day a few years ago, and 1010 Winds asked me about it, and they broadcast it. And they said, what do you think of this whole prospect of Staten Island secession? And because Joe Borelli brought it up right after he lost the public advocate race to Jemine Williams. And I said, well, are we going to uh, drive up our costs by taking on our own expenses, by paying for our own services and cutting a lot of things? Are we going to, you know, are we going to bite off our nose to spite our face? That's what I said. Are we going to do it that way? And I agree that there are ways that the city definitely screws Staten Island. Um, but I don't think that that's what's going to be at the heart of this rally tomorrow. What's going to be at the heart of this rally is a lot of ugliness. It's going to be a lot of racism. It's going to be a lot of sensationalism. That's what Sam Pirozzolo does. And so that's why I'm very skeptical of it. And there's been, just to give a short history lesson of the secessionist movement, you mentioned that your father was
Yeah.
active in that, and it did pick up some steam in the late '80s and early '90s, and
Yeah, that's what he was a part of. And it
yeah,
passed. We voted for it,
it
and
did.
it was
Albany
turned
killed
down
it.
by Sheldon, the speaker, Silver.
Sheldon
So,
Silver, yeah, they killed it in Albany, and so that's what happens a lot of times, and part of the reason that we have voters do those kinds of things where they vote on some things as they express a sentiment, and I'm sure if it were brought to a vote today, it would probably pass in popular vote fashion, not in the legislature, but that. I think part of the reason that it's ultimately up to the legislature is because sometimes, many voters react emotionally and impulsively and, can't see the forest for the trees. And
yeah,
so,
this whole brave, always communist, and you
yeah,
know, just some of the crap that is being said. Um, I've had some words with people that are close with me that have made some real, I told a relative of mine that, your comments are xenophobic, and they're like, no, they're not. I go, yeah, they are. So,
mm,
they're not, no, I'm not racist, you know, and I'm like, yeah, but you're scared because I don't even want to go there. It's just I'm just tired of this ugliness. I did have a friend of mine because they got such a backlash from their comments that they apologized to people, which they began to see that they did make too brash of a statement. So I'm not going to be there tomorrow.
no.
I honestly I don't really want to really look at it, read it either, because I don't need any of those negative comments. Fuck them.
Well, I'm interested to know um, what they suggest as far as secession goes, because the challenges to Staten Island secession remain. It's not just that Albany is going to kill it, which they will, but there's also, again, the financial challenges. There's a really terrific article written by Joe Frusi, who is a Dr. Joe Frusi, who's a history professor at CSI. He's been a previous guest on this podcast. I'll post it in the show notes. It's a really fantastic article about why secession is not a good idea, and it would ultimately cost us more money if we do that. We would have to cut services, we would have to pay for our own amenities, we would have to do the things that, as you said earlier, that we would take for granted now that they come from New York City.
Right.
And so I'm interested to see, not that I expect much rational and cohesive arguments from Sam Pirozzolo, because usually you don't get that. But I'm
I
interested
think
to
it's
see
just
what
going to
they
be
say.
a bitch fest, and they're
Yeah,
and a scare. No, it's it.
it's
I don't think they're going
fear-mongering.
to say anything really constructive about
No,
seceding. I think it's all going to be like this fear mongering, Mondami, and it's going to ruin us. And
I
um,
know. Well, the one thing I'll say about Joe Borelli is when he lost to Jemini Williams a few years ago in the public advocate race, he used that as kind of a springboard to, I don't know what the status of it is. They may have just abandoned it altogether, but he used that as a springboard to talk about another secession study. Like what would that mean for us? I don't know where it's at or what
probably
update.
went nowhere.
Yeah. And so like he at
I
least,
put money.
yeah, well he at least, said, well, let's look at it first. Let's see, and offered something, whereas I'm sure tomorrow is just going to be, pitchforks and torches.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be, and I really don't want to be a part of it. So I will stay clear of Richmond Road, and I'm sure I could, I'll get tidbits of it, from the advance, or is our buddy Scott going to be there too, or
Oh, he might be. I don't know. Well, actually, I went to the Pivot podcast live the other night, and at the King's Theater in Brooklyn. And, one of my favorite podcasters, Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, were there. Of course, they're the hosts, but what
Say
they're doing.
Curtis Lewa showed up.
He did, and the reason why he showed up is because one of those, the way that they've been doing their pivot tour is that everywhere they go, they are having like local people show up. So like I was sort of sad that we got Curtis Lewa, but DC they got Don Lemon. Like I wanted Don Lemon. Like I
Oh,
would.
I like that they had Sliwa on. I
Yeah,
like
it was a good conversation actually. It was a good conversation. It's out now. Listen to it. It's on everywhere. But it was interesting because he walked past me to go inside the theater, and I was like, "What's he doing here?" I was like, "What's he doing here?" I saw the red beret walk past me.
you, special
And
guest.
yeah, and
So
I was like, "What's he doing here?" But the interesting thing was somebody said it was after he left, but and they were taking audience questions. Somebody said that Curtis Lewa should be made the animal person, like the person in charge of the shelters. I don't know what the title is called, but I think that was a good idea.
yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So there as someone who works in rescue, that's just a topic that gets totally neglected
Yeah.
in regards to the animals and laws that prevent people from doing harm, to or neglect. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So
And so
maybe
that
he
was, yeah, that
or
was,
his wife. Isn't his wife really involved in it?
she is, he talked about that
So, but
extensively. Yeah. What
but
was
I'm hungry, so I want to get going.
right? Well, on that note, this is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage.
I'm Nancy Richards, and we'll see you soon.